Hey gang, welcome to Mzansi and USA News. Well, alichoni lingenandaba. The day never goes, or rather the sun goes down without breaking news. In our country, South Africa, the land of my birth, the country that I so love dearly, they never cease to amaze me. Listen to this.
Right, so let's get into this chat now. So the Miss SA pageant is caught up in a controversy about the eligibility of a top 13 finalist, Chidima Adechina. She was born to a Nigerian father and a South African mother with Mozambican roots. Now, some South Africans have now launched an online petition to oppose her participation. But let's get some view on this. We are joined by Kevin Smith, who's a partner at Ahmed Ghani Attorneys. Kevin, a good morning to you. Thank you so much.
Now, before Kevin Smith comes in here, it's very important for you to remember what Naledi said. She was born to a South African who has Mozambican roots, letting you know that her mother is South African, who is obviously, her father is Nigerian, but her mother is South African with Mozambican roots. I'm not sure why the media throws the Mozambican roots there, whether it was to encourage the disharmony that is already in the public domain or not. I know they are quite sinister, that is the mainstream media. Nevertheless, the point is this, guys. Kevin Smith is a partner in a law firm. That means I'm not appealing to authority. I know that appeal to authority can be a fallacious argument, but he makes some compelling points in this video. Because as some of you would know, in 1995, prior to October 1995, all you needed for your child to be South African was for the child to be born in South Africa. It actually is still the case in the US of A to this day. But in other countries like Belgium, Germany, you'll never get that right. Your child remains according to wherever you come from. So if you are a South African and you find yourself in Germany, you fell pregnant whilst you were in Germany, and you gave birth to a child whilst you were in, that child is still a South African. They don't become a Belgian or a German. Why? Their laws are written as such. So in South Africa, in America and South Africa, currently in America, if your child is born there, that is why Trump came out publicly saying America is one of the few countries that still allows foreigners to come here, give birth, and then the child becomes American. And he is anti that. Well, we don't have a leader in our political discourse who has actually spoken to this issue to say, hey, by the way, we changed the law. In 1995, prior to October, you could simply become a South African by being born here. It was now changed to say, if one of the parents is South African, then the child becomes South African by default. Okay, now that's a law, good people. We're not going to change it because we don't like Onwe, okay? That's how things are, right? It seems to me it's very important, therefore, to pay attention to the expert advice, not because we are appealing to authority, but to inform our mindset and our posture in this matter. There's a lot of things being said by simpletons in the public domain. I must warn you in advance, this video obviously will be polarizing. It's one of those videos that I do based on the facts of the matter, not based on whether or not the listener is going to like what they are hearing. Okay? If you're one of those people who likes an echo chamber, you are listening to a wrong voice in a wrong channel. Let's tune in.
Much for joining us. It's been a conversation for just over a week now, and I'm keen to hear your thoughts on, when you see the conversation really starting to make waves on social media. This young woman, Chidima Vanessa Onwe Adechina, a contestant in this year's Miss South Africa pageant. Your first thoughts?
Look, I think the rhetoric around her citizenship status, I think more than anything, it's just an anti-black and a xenophobic sentiment. If you look at the arguments that have been made, people are arguing on behalf of the fact that one of her parents or both of them are not South African or don't have South African origin. But if you look at the requirements to enter Miss SA, you have to be a citizen with an SA ID book. And the fact that she's made it this far actually proves that she's, in fact, got the minimum criteria. So the argument should have been a non-starter to begin with.
Yeah, one of the discussions that
Okay, you heard what the Kevin Smith is saying, right? That the fact that she's made it this far ought to have been proof enough that she met the minimum requirements. Okay, look, I'm going to give him a benefit of a doubt because he's a lawyer, right? Because I think he knows that that is not necessarily factually correct. There's a lot of corruption that takes place everywhere else. That's not proof of anything. And all what we needed to actually prove is that she did meet those minimum requirements. And if she did meet them, indeed, I agree with Kevin. The argument should become a non-starter. But we don't know that she met the minimum requirement. However, with the knowledge which we are getting from SABC, from Newsroom Africa, we are getting a clear indication that the mother was born in South Africa. So the mother is a South African. It is the mother's parents that are Mozambican. Can you see that? So the mother did not even naturalize in South Africa. She is a South African by birth. Okay? So this is very, very important for us to understand. If we understand that, then there's no way Onwe Vanessa was not going to be a South African. It doesn't matter who her father is. It doesn't matter whom her mother chose to to co-parent or to get married to. Makes absolutely no difference. She didn't have to get married to a South African. She could have married to anybody. It makes absolutely no difference, right? This is important for us to understand. So what defines a South African? I like Kevin Smith's definition of what defines a South African. Lest we forget, listen to this.
One of the points that had been made is many South Africans that perhaps are first or second or even third generation from another country but are citizens of South Africa do live in this country. And there's the argument that had her name, for instance, been, Michelle Adetshina, that it would have been different. The fact that her name is Chidima Vanessa Onwe Adetshina as well has sparked the attention. What do you say to that? Is that a surface level discussion?
Look, if we take the discussion at face value, then it might seem that that's the only issue that's at play. But if we are going to take the matter for what people are purporting it to be, then how far along a line down the line of someone's lineage do we have to look for them to be considered South African? Do they have to have South African parents? Does it have to go further to their grandparents, great grandparents? Or does the discussion then become only indigenous inhabitants of South Africa, where it becomes a matter where those who were declared First Nation status by the UN, will they be the only ones who are declared South African enough to compete on a stage like this? And I mean, that's something that everyone can admit would become ridiculous. And I don't just say that based on what's happening now, but I say that in my capacity as a chief of an indigenous tribe myself.
I want to interject here. The First Nation to which Kevin is referring to in South Africa, none of the Nguni tribes, in fact, none of the people who are having this discourse in public domain are indigenous in South Africa. None of them, in terms of the research and the declaration of the UN to which Kevin is referring to. And it is worth your while to go and research that, because it will change your disposition in terms of these arguments. It will, one, give you an insight into your own lineage, into your own reality, that even you yourself are a sojourner in South Africa. You came at a certain point in time. Remember, South Africa is not an island. We don't live in an island, okay? It is perfectly normal and permissible for individuals to come to South Africa to naturalize here and to have children here, and their children become South Africans. It is perfectly normal and permissible for as long as they have come through the correct channels. I do not see in any of the arguments that I see in the public domain being made that she was here illegally. Okay? Now, of course, I'm one person who does not buy into xenophobia because I think it's a poorly defined word, and all these politically correct words I don't subscribe to because a phobia is a fear of something. You're not going to change that by then simply saying people will disagree with you and you accuse them to be having a phobia. Nevertheless, the point he's making is that how far down your genealogy do we go for us to classify that you're a South African? seeing that only the Khois and the Sans are indigenous people in South Africa according to the UN. Do we berate South Africa of all the non-Khois and the Sans? And he says himself being a chief, amongst those Khois and the Sans, he says by himself, it would be ridiculous to go that way. And it's very important that he made this statement to give a clear indication that that's not what he is purporting publicly. That's not what he is literally advancing. He is just simply trying to point out that South Africa, according to the Freedom Charter, belongs to all those who live in it, black and white. Of course, inherent in that statement of the Freedom Charter is the legal process that the person must have undertaken. It goes without saying. So what we ought to be fighting against really is the collapsing of the borders by the ANC, the aspiration of the collapsed borders by the EFF, and any such political parties and lawmakers who make laws that makes it easy for people to be South Africans, because you can't have a nation if you've got collapsed borders. You can't have a nation if you have everyone who walked in here yesterday, whether they have a criminal record or otherwise, or they walked in, their very first act in the country was a crime. They came here illegally, and yet now you want to naturalize them. You get the point. So those are the things that I think our efforts should be at in terms of our discourse publicly. But I don't think that's applicable to this child. This child is clearly as much South African as any of the people who are making the argument that she's not, in terms of our legal processes. Okay? In terms of our law, she's a South African. Her mother is a South African. Her mother was born here. She too was born here. I understand people were talking about how that in her Instagram, she had a flag from Mozambique and Nigerian. Good people, quit whilst you are still ahead. This manner of gossip mongering, you wouldn't like if we had thought police, okay? So quit being thought police of what other people are doing. There is absolutely no reason why she shouldn't celebrate the fact that her father is Nigerian. Not all of us hate Nigerians. We may not agree with them being in the country illegally and being involved in illegal activities, but we don't harbor any hatred towards Nigerians, Zimbabweans, or any other foreign individuals that find themselves in this country for as long as they are here legally. Even the ones who are here illegally, we don't hate them. Instead, when we get to know about it, we'll report it to the law, to the police, so that people can be arrested and be deported accordingly. We ought to be that type of citizenry. Where is this hatred coming from? Why is there so much hatred that people are willing to violate an individual? No, on your Instagram, this is what you had. So if I, let me not make that example. But so people would now spy on you and say, okay, she had a Mozambican flag. That's where her grandparents come from, Mozambique. Okay, there's nothing wrong with her celebrating the heritage of her grandparents. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Who are we to decide whose heritage she should be representing? What we ought to have been defining is what makes us South African. I heard others saying there's 11 languages, official languages in South Africa, and therefore anyone who doesn't speak those languages should not be called South African, or at least be allowed to be representing South Africa in foreign nations. Well, the truth of the matter is very far from such assertions. English, right, is a language that is spoken in South Africa and many other countries. So English is recognized in South Africa. So is Afrikaans, and so is Xhosa, Venda, Pedi, Zulu, you name it, etc., right? You get to the 11th. Okay, brilliant. But what about Chinese? Do you know how many Chinese are South Africans by birth? How about Portuguese? How about Italians? How about Nigerians? How about Ghanaians who taught us math at high school, even at varsity, who have been here from the third and the fourth generation? This shallow and narrow-mindedness needs to cease. That's my opinion. The shallow and narrow-mindedness of how people look at things. We need to recognize that a South African is not only a Xhosa or Zulu speaking. I've been in Gauteng for 24 years, and in that 24 years, I have been ill-treated by my fellow countrymen who would completely call me all manner of derogatory terms as a Xhosa-speaking person. So I understand fully that we have a long way to go. And of course, I pardoned all of those individuals. I always smile when I meet people who are that ignorant, because ignorance is not a virtue. But I never hate on them. I don't harbor resentment. I gave you that example of that ill treatment precisely so that you understand it is common among South Africans to ill treat one another. I mean, for crying out loud, I think there is a girl Vanessa Carrera, I could be wrong about her name, but her surname was Carrera. Both her parents were Portuguese and Italian. Yeah, sure, there was a noise. She won Miss South Africa in 2001. But of course, you may want to argue and say, but the social media was not at its high peak as it is today. Yeah, there was a noise that was made about her, but nothing compared to what I'm seeing right now, where people are trying to write petitions and so on and so forth. Let's close with Kevin.
Isn't something where we can define South African as just by your parents or your grandparents. Being South African has a lot more to do with various other factors. Like our constitution also points out, the country is it belongs to everyone who inhabits it. So the discussion, I think people need to have an honest reflection in terms of where our society is right now and where our tolerance for the rest of our continent lies, because South Africa is not an island. We are still part of Africa. And outside of that, she is a South African herself. So she shouldn't be facing the backlash that she's currently facing.
Yeah, you raised such an interesting.
That to me closes the matter, good people.